Hi guys.
Hey guys.
So today we have Google AdWords Basics. I warn you now, I'm going to call it, I just did then, Google AdWords. It's Google Ads now, it's not Google AdWords anymore, but 7, 8, 9 years of repetition has made me call it the wrong thing. Thank you all for coming along to our webinar today. It's the second webinar for Digital Marketing Meetup. We won't mention the first one. No, it was a learning experience, and I appreciate that you all came along the journey with me. So thank you for everyone who has come along to the second one after that first one, because that was an experience for everybody. So today we're covering up on Google Ads Basics. We're going to give you a good idea on what you can do with the platform and how you can start your first one. How you can start your first one. So without further ado, I'm just going to intro Keith. So Keith Close has been a good friend and mentor for many years. He is an AdWords gun and has worked with places like Positive Learning Solutions and Australian Institute of Business. But without further ado, I'll hand him off to talk more about him.
Cheers, mate. Hi guys. So yeah, Corey tried to get me a bit of a plug. I've been working with businesses for a number of years now, probably since the early stages of digital marketing. And my skills really are probably focused around the Google Ads side of things quite heavily. So my day-to-day business now is managing clients, day-to-day management of Facebook ads, Google ads, LinkedIn ads, and then working with them in a high-level strategic fashion, try and connect those channels together. So hopefully I can offer some value today and give you guys some tips and pointers to help you drive some better management of your ad campaigns across Google Ads.
Awesome, thanks Keith. That's great. So what Keith is going to do is just jump in randomly when I'm talking too long. So Keith, one of Keith's major things here is to keep me on track. So just want to share with everybody how you're going to do that, Keith. So he's going on a timer to make sure that I don't want to much, which I appreciate, but it's also super useful for someone of his caliber to just jump in when he feels that there are things that he can offer and add, as well as he'll take a few slides here and there to break up the monotony of listening to my awesome voice. All right. So without further ado, let me share the screen and let's get started. Okay, so Google AdWords Basics. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep doing Google Ads and Google AdWords. It's just going to keep jumping in and out. So welcome. For you who this is your first time, this is Digital Marketing Meetup webinars. We share tools and tricks on how to use digital marketing and really grow as a community. I'm really passionate about everyone knowing more about how to use digital. It's a huge part of marketing these days, and it just becomes more and more every year. And sadly, what I see time and time again are people who have accounts that just don't perform. I pick up old accounts from people and I look at it and I think, wow, you've paid for this. So one of the outcomes today is that you should be able to go through your account, even if you're a client, and have a better idea of what your agency is doing or what the person working for you is doing, and be able to see, are they doing the right thing? Are you getting the results that you should get? Now, I'm not giving you the full playbook here, but the more familiar you are with the tools that you use, the better off you're going to be. So yeah, that's the why as well. I've kind of moved ahead here, so we'll get straight into it. What is Google Ads? I struggled with this. I really did. I've been working with this platform for 6 or 7 years, maybe longer. And so it's pretty ubiquitous to me what it is and what it is not. But in simple terms, the Google Ads platform is one of the many ways that Google makes money. It's the advertising that they do on search results and across partner websites. And it's a channel that digital marketers use to get in front of more people. Is there anything you want to add to that, Keith?
No, I think you've covered it. I think the core piece is that it just connects a number of different channels that most people are aware of. So Google Search is primary ones, the search engine that everybody uses. Gmail ads, display ads is obviously really important ones. So the ads that follow you around the internet that are on news websites and other websites in the sort of right-hand or top columns a lot of the time. And the other one that's in that mix that not a lot of people are aware of is YouTube and video. So those pre-roll videos and ads and overlays that appear on YouTube is also part of Google Ads as well.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. So moving on, we are going to take you through some of the different types of Google Ads here. So we've got your traditional search ad that will come up a lot. So the example here we have is a electronic drum. For the non-users out here, this is a drum you can use that doesn't drive everybody in your house completely insane. I can personally say that I have friends that saved their marriage, drummers. But basically, you type in a search result here, and then you get your listing. You can see the listings underneath it in green. These ads used to really stand out over time. Google have tried harder and harder to hide them, but it offers you solutions to problems that you run into your search bar. So the other type of ad that we have here, I've jumped right in, questions. I didn't talk about questions. Please write questions. Keith will keep an eye on them, and if there's something pertinent, he'll interrupt me. I've encouraged him to do so. If not, there is a questions part at the end of this. So feel free to ask as many questions as you can. Otherwise, a webinar is really just me talking to a screen. The interactive part is really important, and we appreciate it. All right, so the other part here is Google Shopping Ads. So Google Shopping Ads are fantastic, especially if you're selling a product. So in a Google search ad, you will see a picture, you'll get a product description or listing, so the name of the product, a price, the name of the business, and finally a little call to action, so free delivery or a review or nothing if you're not super good at what you do. Moving on, we also have the display ads that Keith was talking about. So you've probably all seen these banners sort of flick by, whether on the top or the left. What I wanted to point out here was also these ones in the bottom right-hand corner that come up on things like Gumtree, where they look kind of almost like listings. These are actually Google search ads as well. Google display ads as well, and they're really useful. So the Google Display Network is a pretty interesting beast. We're not going into detail on that today, but just for your own reference, and so you can pull out random stats at parties, because who doesn't do that? The Google Display Network covers over 2 million sites and 90% of the internet. So when you're on Google Display, you can basically hit a huge number of people. Moving on, the anatomy of a Google AdWords ad. So we've got two examples here. One's mobile, one's desktop. I try and at least mention this once a webinar. If you're not thinking mobile first, unless you're in a really specific use case, like you're selling to government agencies and they're only on their computer, you really should be thinking mobile first. Like, there are some edge cases, but mobile first is really the way of the future. So don't ignore desktop, but go mobile first too. I heard someone recently talk about the fact that people are still people. So even if the primary buying is done on a desktop, people are still on their mobiles a lot and they're still seeing ads. So please keep that in mind. So here we have the anatomy of a Google Ads ad. Keith, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I'd probably add to that it's the data I'm seeing, and I don't know what the data you're seeing, Corey, is that most traffic these days, even when campaigns are set up both for desktop and for mobile, it primarily skews heavily towards mobile. Some clients that I work with, it's 90% plus. So one of the themes that we'll talk to today is really using the data to sort of drive a lot of that. But from the data and the experience that Corey and I have, we can sort of jump your head there to say that for most clients, you want to be able to look at mobile as the first point of call.
Absolutely. I'm seeing pretty similar numbers there where, mobile is really dominating. It's a huge part of things. Thanks for that, Keith. So we have here the anatomy of a Google Ads ad. And Google's changed this somewhat recently, which is fantastic. You now get up to 3 descriptions. So descriptions is the stuff in blue. You can see there's only 2 on a desktop, but you get 3 in mobile. So we've got Hague's chocolate, premium quality chocolates, and Easter collection out now. These are ones that I've made myself. The actual Hague's chocolate ads don't have this many, don't have this much detail in them. And I'm not picking on Hague's here because I don't like them. I actually love the brand and love the chocolate. I'm a celiac, and it's one of the only gluten-free chocolates around. Oh mate, when you're told you're a celiac, no one really prepares you for the fact that all of your favorite things have minute amounts of this stuff in there, and it ruins your life. So I love Hague's, and the reason that they keep coming up in my presentations is because I want them to do the best that they can, and when I see that there are opportunities to improve, I'll point them out, and I'm hoping they contact me one day and I can help them, or better yet, they see me talking about them and they go, oh, well, I'm going to fix this, and they fix it because they're awesome. So that's covering off on the top 3 lines, and then we've got the descriptions. There are 2 descriptions. They're much longer in length, and we're going to go into more detail about this a bit further on. But we're talking about Hague's Chocolates is a loved brand that creates quality Australian chocolates. Hague's offers boxed chocolates that are perfect for gifting and delivering to your door. So again, I'm going to get into a bit more detail about how and why you should write these ads. Moving on. Goals, KPIs and measurements. Now, Keith and I were going through the old slide deck and updating it because this is an update of a presentation that I gave 12 months ago. And we had an interesting discussion about where KPIs, goals landing. And Keith quite rightly pointed out that that's really, we could do a whole webinar on KPIs and goals and measurements. And so what we landed on here was this slide, which really tells you nothing. This is a screenshot from an active account, and you can see here that we've got average costs, we've got interactions, impressions, and costs. And look, you can draw some conclusions here. That you could say that the 38-cent brand clicks are fantastic, and the $2.40 remarketing clicks are really, really expensive. But without any conversion data, it's really hard to know what the story is here and if this is of any use to you whatsoever. Maybe remarketing has a 10x conversion on brand, and therefore it's actually a much better performing campaign. The point I'm getting at here is that without goals and KPIs, you don't know if what you're doing is successful or if it's a complete and utter failure. So work with your senior management team, if you're a senior management team, work with the people beneath you and identify what are the key things that you're trying to drive from your digital marketing. What are the key conversion points on your website? Is it to purchase chocolates? Is it people to sign up for tours? Is it to drive people to the website so that they can eventually take a tour? Lots of different conversions for different clients, but just keep conversions in mind. Anything to add on that, Keith? Or?
Yeah, just to sort of cover off, it's one of the foundations of successful marketing campaigns is the ability to truly be able to measure the outcome that you're trying to drive. That measurement is quite a dynamic component, so it's important that you sit down and look at the website or the interface and really piece together some of that customer journey. One of the really most clever ways to be able to do that is just a whiteboard with some post-it notes instead of just going step by step through that process so that you can break it down. Without that data, all you're simply doing is optimizing traffic. And to be honest, in 2019, if you're optimizing traffic, you're just missing so much of the opportunity to actually focus your spend and drive better cost efficiencies at a lower cost. You're also missing the opportunity for expansion into new areas. So if you've got the ability to see conversions coming from a very specific cohort, you may actually find that rather than advertising for all of your services, you might be better off just to focus your advertising spend into one single cohort, and that may end up being better for your bottom line.
Awesome. All really good points. All right, let's keep moving. Okay, keywords versus search terms. Now, this is a challenging concept to get into someone's head, and I believe this slide does a pretty good job of kind of conveying it. But basically what we're saying here is that keywords generate search queries. So search queries are the queries that you type into Google, and they're different to the keywords that you put into the Google Ads interface. So we might put a term like skinny jeans into the Google AdWords interface, depending on what targeting we're doing, whether it's broad match or exact, you can get a range of different keywords or search queries generated from that one keyword. So skinny jeans can generate size 6 skinny jeans Gap, or skinny jeans Sale, or skinny jeans Juniors. There's a lot of variation in what a keyword can generate, and it's not specifically just what you type in unless you specifically ask for it to do that. So we'll move on to the next slide, and I'll let Keith take you through this next part.
Yeah, great. So one of the really important things that, as a basic fundamental, is to understand one of the reports that's available in the Google Ads interface. That's called the search term report. The search term report is really the looking under the covers of what users are searching in for in Google, what your keywords are matching to, and how that's then correlating to the results. So whether that be traffic or whether you've got the conversion data that then flows through into your account. It really gives you an eye-opening look into, is the traffic that's being generated through to my site the best traffic? Can I make changes to that traffic? Am I getting really irrelevant traffic for odd terms that might not make sense to my business? Competitor terms is a very common one in this space as well. So it's a really important report. To find this report within the interface, you navigate into the keyword level. Just go back one slide, Corey. You navigate into the keyword level, select your individual keywords, and the arrow here highlights where you'll see the search term report. So you can click this button here on individual terms, or just above this section, if it also says search terms there, you can click that to see the search terms data. So there's one thing that you take out of this webinar. If you ever run AdWords campaigns using keywords, please look at this report regularly and really make sure that, in particular, you're focusing around the terms that have high spends and might be taking a 10 to 15, 20% portion of your budget, and question, are these the best terms? Are they driving the most relevant traffic to my website? The next slide just really covers an example of what this search term data looks like. So the yellow section here is the keyword that we've got targeted for this particular client and this particular setup. And then you've got some of the search terms that users have typed in. Now, what you'll notice with some of those, just to highlight probably one, which would be wine bag, which is about 5, 6 down in the yellow column. You notice there that term doesn't contain cooler. However, it has matched to wine cooler bags. Now, depending on the client and the product that you're offering here, this may or may not be relevant traffic. In this example, for this particular client, this is irrelevant traffic. They don't actually offer cooler bags themselves. So this is a really good example of how this client could drive better cost efficiencies by excluding that word cooler and applying a negative keyword to clean traffic up.
Awesome, thanks Keith. So we'll keep moving, and we're finally into setting up your first campaign. So first thing you need to understand about setting up your first campaign is the campaign structure. So this took a little bit of time to get into my head, and if this takes a bit of time to get into your head too, that is completely fine. This will be uploaded afterwards, so you can watch this again and again to try and drill it into your head. But basically, you start off with an AdWords account. So this is assigned to the username Google account that you use with a username and password, and underneath this umbrella as an AdWords account, you have individual campaigns. So the campaigns can be split into different focuses, different groups of keywords. Even I've seen different geos and different times of day, which is an interesting way of using it. But generally, you're looking at your products and services and breaking them out into different campaigns, so that you have a daily budget in each, and then you can control how much money each gets. So if you're selling shoes, and you find out that men's shoes sells much harder than women's shoes in a particular time period, or they just sell better in general because you've got a male skew in your audience, you can put more money towards the male and take the money off of the female. Moving on from the campaign level into the ad group level. So the ad group level is where you keep your keywords, and you should keep these tightly themed around different keywords. We'll go back to our shoes and we'll say that we've got ad groups would be under men's shoes, might be Nike shoes, AdWords shoes, ASICS shoes. So you can split it out by brand. There's a multitude of other ways you can split them out. But the idea here is that they're themed around a tight idea. Like another way of splitting them out would be basketball shoes versus tennis shoes versus running shoes. This is the basic campaign structure, and we're going to run through this today in a bit more detail on each step, but that's the overview. This is a pretty important thing to get in your head, so I might see if Keith has anything else to add, but we will kind of stretch out on it a bit more.
Yeah, sure. Just before we cover that off, I just had a question from Kerry just around negative keywords in the chat. So we'll probably cover this a little bit later. I just really want to cover this off and the concept of it. So it's really important to understand that the individual keywords that we target in a campaign, so let's say red shoes, blue shoes, depending on the classification of the type of keyword match type that you're applying, so there are a few different types that you can apply to that, you'll actually see some traffic come through for those particular keyword terms. So the example I had with the wine cooler bags in the previous slide, we can apply negative keywords. So that's just basically say we want to target broad terms related to wine bags, go and find me a bunch of search terms and put my results in front of users for those terms. However, I don't want the word cooler to be one of those words. So if we put a negative keyword into the account for cooler, that'll actually exclude it from showing against keyword terms which have the word cooler in them. Corey's just jumping ahead to show the slide on this example, I think. So this is the way that you can drive better efficiencies by saying, here's the traffic, or a lot of traffic coming into my landing page, site, whatever it might be. How do I take the traffic that I don't want and exclude that out? And negative terms are where you can take a singular term and exclude certain terms and certain search phrases from matching up to your keyword. No worries.
Awesome, thanks Keith. I'll just get back to where we were. Oh, look, it's a preview of what's to come. All right, so moving on. Hey Chocolates is who we're building a campaign for today, and we're building a brand keyword. So branded keywords, the highest ROI that you can get for keywords. So they tend to be a cheaper cost per click because not a lot of people are competing on them. There is nothing wrong with having competing on branded keywords for competitors, although they tend not to convert super well. They're people who have already heard of your brand, so they're more likely to be purchasing from you. They click through more frequently, so there's a higher click-through rate, and they cost a lot less. So we've also got generic keywords and brand generic keywords that are lower in ROI and aimed at creating awareness and expanding out. We're going to be focusing mainly on branded keywords today. So moving on, let's create our first campaign. So first thing you'll see is, well, this is a screenshot of part of it, but this is the big scary, oh my God, how does all this work? Don't worry, we're going to take you through the process. So the first thing you'll want to do is create your first account, your first campaign, sorry, and that's the blue cross, yeah. This Google's thing is whenever you're starting something, it's a blue cross now, which isn't terrible. Well, not blue cross, but it's always a cross. So this particular example, because we're doing a branded campaign and we talked about conversions, but we are assuming that you haven't set that up yet. So we're going to drive website traffic and we're going to use search. So we won't be delving into display shopping or video today. That will be for intermediate and advanced webinars, but we're giving you a good idea on how to put your first campaign together. The highest value that you can get from your time with us is to create a branded campaign. So we're going to call the campaign branded terms, and we're going to include search partners. Now, search partners is a group of hundreds of websites that Google handpick to list advertising on. They're of high value specifically for brand terms. I've had mixed results with search partners when I've used them in other areas, but I always turn search partners on when it's branded terms. They do convert better because people have heard of you, but keep in mind that everything should be tested. So as you go through, you should see if your search partners traffic is converting and performing well. So the next thing that you will be looking to do is create your geo. So what target area are you looking to serve your ads in? For this particular ad, we're going to go for all of South Australia. Keith, you got something to add?
Yeah, it's really important just to note with the geos, just add one thing there, Corey, that geos can only be added at a campaign level. So when you think back to that structure before with the parent and child nesting of campaign and ad groups and then keywords within inside those, it's really important to understand if you're looking to geo-segment your targeting, that you'll need to do this at the campaign level. So effectively in a structure, if you're targeting, let's say, South Australia and Victoria, you could target those within the same campaign. So the example here, you could add both geos, but if you wanted to actually target them separately to have individual state budget control, you would need to split those out ideally into separate campaigns, one targeting South Australia, one targeting Victoria.
That's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up, Keith. I am aware of your time and getting pretty keen, but thank you for pointing that out. I don't want to miss important nuggets like that, and that is definitely an important one. So with targeting, you can either do it by location, or you can do it, you can either do it by location, you can do it by radius, or you can do it you can also do it by postcode. So you can see here, another way of targeting would have just been a 40-kilometre radius around Adelaide. Or if you just wanted a specific location in Adelaide, you could choose that as well. So moving on, we're going to set our daily budget. A note to make here for all of you newbies, and some of you not so new who get tripped up on this from time to time, Google can spend more than your daily budget. In fact, it can spend up to double of your daily budget. But what Google ensures is that over the course of a month, it will only spend what that averages out over a month. So if we do $10 a day, we can be assured that at the end of the month, depending on the length of the month, so it's a 30-day month, you'll only spend $300. If you do, I did get tripped on this recently where the interface showed that it spent 3 times as much in a day. And the interface can show that, but then you can be credited back the additional amount on that day. So important to note there that will change. So moving on, there's a lot of different types of bid strategies that you can use. We're sticking with maximize clicks today because it is very user-friendly. It's great for someone who's starting out anew to get started. So maximize clicks gives the bidding control to Google and allows them to maximize your spend to get the highest number of clicks to your website. And again, we're doing this because we're assuming that you don't have conversion tracking set up on your website. Once you've got conversion tracking, this should be set to maximize conversions. I always set the CPC limit to be $2 on a brand campaign. It's unusual to be spending more than $2 a click. Generally, they're a lot cheaper than that. But my general rule of thumb is start at $2 and then see what kind of traction your campaign is getting. If it's not getting enough traction, you can always bid harder and bid more. But to start with, $2 is my tip for starting off. And we're going to move on past ad extensions. We're going to cover that later, on to keyword match types. So this is another one where you might need to come back and have a bit of a think about it, have a bit of a play and review over it. And don't feel bad about this being a bit of a challenge. It's challenging for everyone when they first learn it. So AdWords match types. You have 4 match types. I'm going to cover off each one on its own. So first we have broad match. So it doesn't have a special symbol. The example here we've got is women's hats. Now this is pretty much anything close to women's hats. It can generate a huge number of variation, and they can be really different. You can see an example here by ladies' hats, very different to women's hats. Don't use this. there's a couple edge cases, but in general, just don't use it. Moving on, we've got broad match modifier. This is a plus symbol in front of your keyword. In this example, it would be women's hats with pluses in front of them. And this is a closer variation to synonyms, so hats for women. This is a really good place to start in terms of giving Google a little bit of leeway, but not so much leeway that you end up spending thousands of dollars on crazy terms. I had a client once who did fleet tracking for GPS tracking for vehicles. So this is a few years ago. It's not as big a deal now. Everyone's got a mobile phone, but at the time it was a more interesting technology. But basically, they give you the ability to track the whereabouts of any of the vehicles in your fleet, be trucks or cars or whatever. And I got this account. It had been managed by somebody else. I don't know who, and I wouldn't name and shame anyway. And I'm looking through the search term report that Keith mentioned earlier, and I find $10,000 spent on GPS cat trackers. Now, if you're unaware, GPS cat trackers is literally a collar you can put on your cat to see where he goes in the day and to find him if he gets lost. So I called this client and asked if he sold GPS cat trackers, and he said no. And he was flabbergasted to find that he had spent $10,000 on terms that had nothing to do with his industry whatsoever. It was a horror story. It was crazy. Moving on, we've got phrase match. So phrase match is moving down a level of specificity. So we've got here women's hats. So it's a phrase that's closely related with variations in face. So buy women's hats. You can see like we've got women's hats in the phrase, and then we're just adding an extra term to the front of the end. It's getting much more tighter. This is another match type that I don't use very often. The reason being is that you've got the broad match, which drives really good outcomes, and you've got exact match we're about to talk about, which only gives you a specific keyword match. So it has to be the same. It has to be exactly the same or very, very close variants. And this is super useful in bidding, in driving the cost down per click, because if you've got a term that you know converts and works really well, like Haig's chocolates, I'm sure that converts very well. You can make it an exact match for just that term, and you end up paying less. You might pay a little bit more per click, but you end up paying less per conversion. So generally, when I'm building campaigns these days, it's just broad match modified and exact. Keith, have you got anything to add to that? It's one of those things that it takes a while to get your head around.
Yeah, Ravina wanted us to cover a little bit on broad match modifier. I do think it's an interesting topic to talk to. I 100% recommend and support Corey's recommendation to not use broad match until you fully understand what broad match is. So the delineation between the two is applying the plus symbol in front of the keywords. Just to dig into that just a little bit more, it can be used in multiple variations. So the order of those two words does not matter. So the example on screen at the moment with women's hats, both with plus symbols in front of them, means that women's hats will match to a search term for user searches for that, but also hats women, for example, as well. So depending on the language that you're using there, you can get irrelevant search traffic that comes through, which makes sense. Using these keywords is a really good way if you're not sure of the search market or specific search terms, which, to be honest, many of us are not. And it's a really clever way to be able to use the data to build your campaigns to that much more refined level. So applying search term matches using broad match is a great way to say, all right, well, I've got a layer of control of the traffic. I know that the search term using the broad match modifier means that I should be driving pretty relevant traffic, but I'm going to pay attention very closely to the search term report. I guess further to what Corey said, a lot of the campaigns I work with, I use broad match modifier very extensively. And then just applying negatives to the negative traffic, because the negatives can essentially say, well, if I'm targeting broad and I've got the negative list built out enough that it's taken out a lot of the irrelevant traffic, I still leave the campaign in a place that gives it the dynamic nature that should women's hats, let's say a particular search term that could have been flagged from another campaign, Coca-Cola women's hats, right? So Coca-Cola runs a special campaign, you'll start to see that traffic flowing through. Now that search term may not have ever been used before, and if you've moved into an exact match, you will be not targeting it. So it's really important to understand that it does leave an element of collection and data-driven approach to it through there. The really key piece, though, to come back to my earlier slide on search term report, if you're not looking at your search term report at minimum fortnightly, at most monthly, you're going to have irrelevant traffic that's coming through and there's going to be wastage.
Cool. Thanks for that, Keith. We will keep moving. All right, so next we've got negative keywords here. And we've spoken a lot about negative keywords already, so we're going to try and keep things moving here a bit and just say that if you're looking for a term that you don't want to be included in the results, to add that as a negative keyword. So you can use your broad, your exact, your phrase, and your broad match modified as negatives. Broad match modified as negative? I've never done it before, but I assume you can do it. To get greater control of what you can and can't see. Generally, most people are using exact match to remove exact things, but I do use broad pretty regularly if it's a term that just has so little to do with what you're trying to achieve that it doesn't make any sense. So a great example is I've had a funeral home client in the past, and if you put in the term funerals to try and promote this funeral home, you're going to get a lot of traffic specifically around people looking for a funeral, and that doesn't help anybody because the person searching is just trying to find, Bob's funeral. So the solve there for me was just to get a list of the 1,000 most common used names and drop them in as negative terms. And that campaign changed overnight because suddenly it's not showing up for people looking for those funerals anymore. So we're going to keep moving. Going on to keyword research. So keyword research is really important. For a brand, it's pretty straightforward. It's typing it into Google, using the Google Keyword Planner, and also using SEMrush as well as talking to people. If you have access to your search console, you can also see terms that are used around your brand. A great example of finding little search terms that I've had is I looked into some lawyers and found, of course, the actual lawyers that work at a law firm were generating a lot of clicks for the website. So I brought that over and used that as a brand term. So Search Console, for those of you who don't know, is a tool that Google use for you to be able to see what's going on with your website. I don't want to go too much down that rabbit hole right now because we are talking about Google Ads. But in terms of keyword research, specifically for brand, it's reasonably straightforward. You can go into the keyword planner or the interface. Or as I said, SEMrush is a magnificent tool, and I actually have a 7-day free trial linked in the description below. This has taken a lot of cool stuff from Google and really expanded it out a bit. It's a tool that I use every day. So if you're interested, check that out. So we'll keep moving. This Keith informed me that this actually changed yesterday, which is just fantastic. So Keyword Planner looks very similar to this, but Google being Google, for those of you who work on these platforms pretty regularly, you know that Google and Facebook are always changing. And this has slightly changed. But you can see here we're doing some keyword research for Haig's chocolate. and I've got Haig's chocolate online, chocolate coins, gourmet chocolate. You can see the Haig's chocolate terms are really the only ones that we want from here. And the other terms are good terms, but they're not brand specific. So as you type keywords in, you get generated a list of different keywords. You can see the average monthly searches, what kind of competition it has, what you would expect to pay. These are all, in my experience, indicators rather than I wouldn't bet the house on anything that this says, especially not how much you pay for a keyword. I've seen it wildly out, but it does give you a good idea on what terms to target. And Keith has really been pushing today, and it's something that I heavily believe in too. It's about testing and experimentation. So you find as many keywords as you can about a topic, you put it into the interface, and you see which ones work and which ones don't. None of us really have a true crystal ball to see what keywords are going to be fantastic and what keywords are going to be terrible. Trial and error is really the only way you're going to know. You can know pretty quickly, but that's the best way to approach that. So moving on to ad groups now. So we've created a campaign. The campaign's called brand. We moved on to the ad group. Ad groups should be tightly themed with 10 to 25 keywords. The default bids are within the ad group, and the ads and ad extensions can be specifically applied to that ad group. So in our example here, we're going to create an ad group. You can see brand's already been created. So we click on the cross, the magic cross, to get everything running, create an ad group, and then Google kicks you into writing your first ad. And this is where my talking about the anatomy of an ad starts to make a bit more sense. So the first thing you do is put in your URL. Now, this is probably the only time that you do this, but, well, there are other occasions, but generally you want to drive someone to a specific landing page around what they're trying to search for. Luckily, in this instance, we're looking for Haig's chocolates. The homepage is the best place to send people who are looking for Haig's chocolates. So the first headline is Haig's chocolates. You can see the first one coming up there. The second headline is Premier Quality Chocolates, and the third one is the Easter collection out now. Then moving on, we've got the option to put a page path. It didn't really apply for this particular campaign because it's brand. Generally, you can put some page paths look like you're going to a different page on the website. Moving on though, we've got description. So we've got the first and second descriptions. You can see that sitting here below the headlines. As I said, not all of these are shown all the time, but it's fantastic that Google gives us the option to add all of these. You really want to match your headline to searcher intent. So we're looking for Haig's chocolates. We really want to know that we're in the right place for Haig's chocolates. So you can see that that's the first thing that I've put here. I'm making the assumption there that they're looking at that one of the selling points of premium quality chocolate is something that they're looking for. And Easter collection is something that's topical right now. The description is a bit more of your sales copy. It's driving people to make an action, to click on your ad and to move forward. So description 1 and 2 are more highlighting the benefits of your product and encouraging people to click through with call to actions. Really be strategic about how you put these together. You can see the headline 3 and description 2, they both have the new next to them. They're the ones that will get cut off most of the time. So make sure that your ad makes sense without these in it. It's very important to make sure that you're not writing War and Peace, and that really these elements should make sense on their own without being put next to anything else. All right, I'm sure Keith could talk to this, but I want to keep this moving because we're already at 44 minutes. Next, we have the keywords that we're targeting for this particular campaign. You can see Haig's chocolate, Haig's chocolate Adelaide. And you can see that I'm using that broad match modifier there for this campaign. And I've purposely put in here a few terms that shouldn't be in here. So the factory tour is a different outcome for a person. So someone who's looking for a factory tour is looking to perform an action. They're looking to go on the factory tour, or they're looking for more information about the factory tour. With a brand campaign, we want to keep this pure brand. We just want people who are interested in the brand. Factory tour would be its own campaign. We could set your own budget to it, or at the very least sit in its own ad group where you can kind of control how much traffic it gets. So I've put this in here to highlight the fact that you be very careful and tightly theme your keywords for an ad group. Moving on. Next, we have extensions. We have all of them here in one place, which is great. This is another great suggestion by Keith. So we start off with Sitelink Extensions. They drive people. Actually, you know what, Keith, do you want to take this one? You're kind of.
Mate. I was going to jump in there. So just quickly running through what these extensions are. So you've got Sitelink Extensions, which are links with an additional 2 description lines that sit below them. Now, depending on the format and position of the ad, you are going to have different compositions of this particular site link. So you might see all 4, you might see 2, you may see just some with the links of Jordan's shoes, and the description lines below may not show. Google has full control over how it shows these to users based on the search algorithm and the results that they're putting to users. On the right-hand side, you then have callouts. Callouts are individual proof points or unique selling points that are really good at getting a couple of key points across to the client and why they should buy your product. So for an e-commerce client, typically this is going to be things like limited inventory, free shipping, same-day shipping, those sort of components. For a business that generates leads, this could be anything along the lines of call-out fees, free quotes is very common, or any of those other sort of things that you use or any of your other marketing collateral when you speak to potential clients, or some of the proof points you may use through your website. Structured snippets is a pretty in-depth site link, but it's a pretty in-depth extension. But what it covers is it gives you the ability to be able to list off services. So the example here is types. So for this particular this particular blind client, it's a different types of blinds that they sell. You could use this for the different types of services that you offer. If you're offering, so this blind client offers blinds, curtains, upholstery cleaning, you could list that with the structured snippet extension. Also notice on this extension as well, just below the 4 links, that's the other preview of how some of the Sitelink extensions can look without the description lines attached to them. So this shows another variation on that. And then the final is location extension. So for locally located businesses that have a physical store or presence, it's really important that you try and use that, because it's another proof point that shows that you're in the local market. Those location extensions can also be used via people that want to get directions to your business, to call your business. So it offers a lot of value. One thing on these extensions as a whole, it's very common when I audit accounts, train people on marketing, even business owners, that extensions are one of the things that people forget. I highly, highly recommend that you go through and at minimum add 4 Sitelink extensions, your 4 call-out extensions, and a structured snippet extension to the campaign, because it will help you improve your ad rank. It will also give you more real estate on Google when your results show, which should attract more attention, therefore getting better results for you as well. And then the final one here is a call extension. So for businesses generally local in nature that want to receive phone calls, you can call directly off of Google. On the right-hand side, there's a slight variation on that ad here, which is a call-only ad, which effectively does exactly the same action. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Keith.
No worries.
Yeah, I knew you'd be able to speak to detail with that. I appreciate it. All right, so we're coming up to our last thing. We did mention that we tend to get a bit excited and waffle on this, so I apologize, we're going a little bit over time here, but what I want to talk about is landing page experience. Now, quality score relates directly to landing page experience. Basically, here's a scary, ugly slide with lots going on. Without breaking this down, what we're talking about here is quality score and how this affects your ads. Basically, Google wants you to drive traffic to the most qualified people. So what I'm trying to say here is your ad needs to be good. If your ad's not good, Google doesn't want it. So if you type in red shoes and you type in red shoes, you see an ad, you click on it, and you get blue shoes, or you get high heels and you're not looking for blue high heels, you're looking for red pumps. This is a bad experience for the user, and therefore it's a sign to Google that you're not great. So Google are looking for your click-through rate, so how many people click on your ad and where they go to. Your bounce rate on your landing page, so your time on page, and how relevant everything sort of ties together. I don't want to go into too much detail about this, but if I can just leave you with a tip here, it's to ensure that whatever someone searches, it should be in the ad itself. So we had Haig's chocolates. If someone writes in Haig's chocolates, they should see Haig's chocolates, and then the landing page experience should be about Haig's chocolates. Keith?
Just one thing to add here. This slide's pretty complex, which is why we're not talking to it a huge amount. We could talk all day about this slide. But the really important thing to understand here that Google's trying to drive through using ad rank and quality score to be able to deem how much you pay for a click is that Google wants relevant results to search term users. And that's why when we create ad groups, we should be trying to create tightly themed ad groups that are relevant keywords or similar keywords of the same theme that drive to a landing page that makes sense. So in Corey's example earlier with the chocolate factory tour, if we're sending that user to the home page or to a specific product page, that's a really undesirable experience and likely to have a low quality score. So from Google's eyes, they would say you should pay more for that click if you're competing against others who are driving a better experience and driving from the keyword through to chocolate factory tour landing pages.
Awesome. Great example. Thanks, mate. So last thing we're going to go through here is setting up your billing. This is pretty straightforward. So in the top right-hand corner, you have tools, billing and payments. You select your country, you put in your credit card details, and away you go. So I want to talk about a further study here because this was basics. This was an overview. This wasn't an exhausting list of everything that you can do. I've put these courses in what I believe to be beginner, intermediate, and advanced kind of ways of looking at it, more so for the time you spend and the detail they go into. So first of all, you've got lynda.com. It's a great resource, online resource. It's reasonably cheap. In fact, if you have a state library card, you can get lynda.com for free. And the Google Ads Essential Core training course is fantastic. Moving up a level, you have the Google Academy. So for all those people out there in agency land who aren't a partner yet, get on there, get certified. And Google has this huge library of things that you can learn or train on, sorry for that, called Digital Garage. So check that out. And then finally, there's this Udemy or Udemy, depending on how you want to pronounce it, course called the Ultimate Google AdWords Training Course. This is huge. This covers everything you could possibly want to think about in terms of search marketing. I believe it's 40 hours long. It's a big investment. It's only about 20 bucks, but if you want to know everything that you can know, check this out and just read. You know, the more things that you read, the more webinars that you go on, the more that you absorb this information and try stuff out, the better you will be. So do we have any more questions, Keith?
Yeah, we did have a couple of questions. So there are a couple of questions around using broad match modifier and campaign performance. I think we spoke to it a little, but I don't know whether you want to throw in any experience that you have attached to that.
So is that how well they perform with broad match modifiers?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when this first came out, this is a few years old now, but when it first came out, the way that we used to build these campaigns was that we would break out each individual match type. Remember that? Like you'd have broad, you'd have phrase, you'd have exact, and it was a nightmare to build them all. And you know what you know. And so when broad match modified came out, I went, oh, this is crap. I'm going to keep doing it the way I do it. But I did eventually try it, and I was just shocked at how much I got my ass kicked by broad match modifier. Like when you're there's our hour. We're not doing too bad. So yeah, when I moved to broad match modifier, what it really taught me was that Google does know a lot about what they're talking about. Google really do have a good idea about how to target the right things and leave the wrong things off. I don't think Google is quite there yet in terms of ensuring that. Let's just get my face back on. You can't just hand it all over to Google and let them do it. But in broad match modified, I've seen some amazing results where it's just really blown most things out of the water. And it's what I use a lot of the time. We've hammered on this point time and time again throughout this webinar, but it's worth repeating. You've got to be checking your search terms report. You've got to be adding negative keywords, especially with this one. So I've seen some great results, but it only works if you're regularly adding negative keywords to make sure that you're not driving crap onto your client's website, onto your website.
Yeah, totally. And staying on top of that for the long term. It's not something that you set and forget or get to a point that you rely on that traffic. Search term traffic's always changing. As new things are happening in market, people are changing what they search for. You've got to stay on top of this. My experience with this is I've seen more scalable campaign performance from campaigns that are likely to need that flexibility to scale. So the best use case or best talk through of this is where a client or a business use case is that you may have a fixed budget, but that's not always going to be a fixed budget, and there may be the need to expand that budget in the future for any reason. So if you're currently spending $500 a month, that's great. But if you move to a really niche set of exact match keywords, and then the business you're working with or the organization you're working inside of says, oh, we want to double, triple that budget, those exact match keywords may not scale as well as what broad match allows you to bring in that additional traffic. So it can be really much more aligned with campaign flexibility. The only other questions we had, Rubina asked one around whether we've seen tourism shopping ads. I think that's what the question was. So shopping ads in the tourism/travel sector. Have you seen any?
No, mate. It'd be really interesting to see how they performed. And I kind of want to run an experiment and see how that would work.
Yeah, I haven't. I run a lot of e-commerce campaigns, and knowing the structure of those campaigns and the data that it needs from a product base, I haven't. However, it's always been a question of mine as to how far away we are from us moving to that. Google's always changing what they're doing in terms of trying to bring the results that happen on landing pages into that Google experience. So some of the recent stuff that they've made is, the ability to book airplane flights directly from Google or pull those results up. Tourism experiences are very similar. So it's likely in the future that these types of experiences will make their move into Google Ads, because it's the monetization of those experiences. And the final question was just on local businesses versus online businesses. It was early in the webinar, but it's probably worth covering just in terms of search terms of what we went through today. Yep. So I think a really key piece from my perspective is that a search campaign can cover both. It can be a local-based business, so a lead business or a traditional what we call lead business that needs phone calls or form completions to then go out and do plumbing services or electrical services for a client. And then online businesses, while their post-click experience, so the experience from clicking on the ad to what you want that user to do, are generally different. So most online businesses have some sort of e-commerce transactional model or some other, sign up for a course type flow. However, there's still a keyword base. There's still people searching for the products that you're offering. If you've got a product that fits a market, it's a really good way to not just think that campaigns from a search perspective should be either local or online. It does cover both.
I have nothing to add to that. That's perfect. I did want to pick one thing up about the broad keywords that did pop in my head. And you're talking about scalability in terms of scaling up, but it's also great for scalability in terms of lots of geographic locations and lots of keywords. So I had a client that I won't name, but Keith worked on with me as well, and that had 160,000 keywords on it, and it was a multi-million-dollar budget per year. And that was a monster. That was a full-time job just managing the budgets across it, because they were split into geos, and it had a lot of different keyword match types and stuff. And having broad match modified keywords across national rather than specific would have made that account much, much easier to deal with. Much, much easier to deal with. So it gives you that opportunity to scale things up as well.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I've seen a number of service-based industry accounts that are in very similar structures, and the challenge with those types of structures is that if you go too much into the minutiae, and this is where exact match can get quite tricky, you have a higher expectation on managing your time. So the resources required in order to manage that campaign can potentially increase depending on how granular you go with the campaign structure. So one of the things that's always important is to look at how much time you're spending on it. So if you're a business owner or you're working inside a marketing department, and this is one of the functions that you perform, if you're spending 10 hours a month on this, you've got to equate that to where else could I be spending my time, and could I be having greater impact? And could this be, an AdWords specialist or someone, or hiring a staff member to take this on board to assist you to scale it and make it run more efficiently?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm all for getting and having a go, but there becomes a point of diminishing returns where you're much better off handing it off to someone who loves and does this stuff every day. Like I can speak for myself and Keith. I love this stuff. I have a custom spreadsheet that I look at every morning, and if my numbers are up, yes. And if my numbers are down, I'm down. Get on my keyboard and I try and find where the problem is and how I can make my numbers improve better. I'm passionate about this sort of thing, and that's why we're in front of you here. But if you're not passionate about it and it's really a grind, then sometimes it's a much better ROI to just hand it off to someone who cares, like me and Keith. All right, well, if there are no more questions, I'm going to say thank you very much for coming along this ride with us today. Get along to our meetups. We're not having one next month because it's Easter and no one's here. But the following month, we will be running an Ask Me Anything with a panel of people speaking, which is going to be fantastic. So keep out for those details coming up. I'd like to thank Keith. Thank you very much for coming on this webinar with me.
No worries. Thank you for inviting me.
No worries. It definitely breaks up the monotonous tone, which is my voice. Finally, I would just like to ask you to like, subscribe, and comment, even if it's negative. I love feedback. I feel like there's always opportunities to improve these webinars and these meetups. So if there's something that I can improve upon, or if there's something you and just let us know what you think about. And thank you very much for coming on this ride. Have a great day. Bye.
Sayonara, guys.